before.
Let me just
What's that? Oh, give me 1 second. Do this. Okay, that works. Good.
Okay, yeah.
Sure. So our designs are based largely around CPCs. I printed some off and would have liked to have a clear model to show you. Unfortunately, it is slightly uncured at the moment. It's right here, but I do have this model. If anyone would like to see a CPC, this is what one looks like, but it's not very different from the drawings. So would anyone care to see it in person? No? Y'all lovely. Okay.
You good, Alex?
Yeah. Don't have to be gentle with it. Printed out hard stuff. So the idea was to cast that in some of this two-part epoxy and then recast it out of a clear version. Unfortunately, this is somewhat unclear at the moment. And then once it's out, we would glue tinfoil or sputter some metal onto the outside and make it reflective on the outside to make a proper CPC, which is likely how we'll be making whatever model we make in the end. But unfortunately, it's not meant to be at this very moment. Anyway, I'll hand it over to Chancy for our basic drawings.
Okay.
For the plans.
So this is the overall design that we're going with. It seems I think it seems a little simplistic, but I mean, we're just trying to transfer light from one spot to another. So at the top, we have the CPCs that actually exist in much longer prisms than what's being brought around. And then the light gets channeled through curving along the way to take it from varying degrees, but generally vertical to horizontal in the common light channel. So it's these would be the single unit. Go ahead. So this is a three-dimensional, and here you can also, I hopefully make out the dimensions. So this would enable it to be easily moved and put into place, and also, which also makes it able to be installed in residential. This is important because one of the features we're going after is versatility, to be able to put it wherever, but also, as we'll show in just a bit, have various combinations of how to install them together. Those are inches. Those that would be very big in meters, yeah. So yeah, this is about yay big. It goes up to about the single unit from the furthest on the left here, all the way over here, about 3 feet. So here they are all in a row, and you combine them, making the common light channel shared all throughout, multiplying what's then collected and minimizing the amount of light guides that would need to be put throughout the building to bring it into the interior, completely interior spaces. And in order to find the right amount of light, instead of just having throttles on the back end in the room, which you can still do, you can also, so as to not waste investment in too many units than you need, use how many units are installed to optimize how much you need for the spaces you're intending to route them to.
You mean the filter? That's the gap in between, to minimize that polarity?
Just the minimize how many units you get. So you don't get too many, and only try to adjust the amount of light coming in after the light guides. But instead, I do it at this point, doing the calculations beforehand, how much you expect to get.
You can mute my
so we saw them all in a row. Now they're in an array in order to maximize space. There, unfortunately, you do have some space in between the CPCs getting channeled down, but you need structure there to exist at all. And you need it there a little bit more so that they're able to nest perfectly together as such. And then this is that same row, except at the end we have the light guides. apologize for the words being cut off. And so here they travel down through all of them, go through, and then can't really make it out here, but each one of these is a bulwark, light guides, just a larger marker optics. All collected and then come from a ribbon to a bundle, and you can take the whole bundle, you can separate it depending how many you have in a row to go to the various rooms and spaces within the rooms, you know. So you have like 4 lights in a larger room probably.
So each of those in the depth dimension, is that homogeneous? Am I looking at sheets or fibers?
Oh, they're all fibers. So this
Fibers.
has, I think it was about 30 fiber optic light guides coming off of it. About a 1/2 inch thick. And then, yeah, for each row, you would need another light guide panel.
Yeah, I mean, once you get the light into the fibers is relatively inexpensive now, and they're flexible, so you don't necessarily need to follow a particular pattern from the end here to the small.
Yeah, by working with a group of smaller ones, yeah, you can work much tighter radiuses and just more easily maneuver it all together, as well as being able to separate it out.
So I guess let me ask a more naive question, perhaps. Why did you pick one direction of bend as opposed to another direction? Like is this an asymmetric structure? Is there a particular reason for this? Is it just because you wanted to populate that twin on the end?
Yeah, it is a representation, like we can bend it as per our needs. If it's flexible, we can like put the direction of the end of these light guides to anywhere we want. This is just a representation, like in which direction we are showing.
It's to be able to combine all of them together. And to do that in strictly vertical, to have it go straight to light guides. If we put a line of light guides off of each of these, we'd have so many light guides. We were trying to minimize that. So not only have everything from a single unit go to a common, but for multiple units, go to a common light channel.
Now, are you going to explain that last part?
This,
Yes.
yeah, that's the light guide panel. So this would of course just attach right on, and then everything that comes in there dead ends to the light guides. And
And
just
then that goes
continues
into
on its
the-
path. I thought about putting those in, but I thought it'd be too confusing
Yeah,
because
that's
there's
fine.
so many of them.
So the end there, you have a bunch of fiber, which you can connect to lighting fixtures, is that the idea?
Yes. To then be diffused because it'd be pretty concentrated.
Okay.
The next one is the approximate model of the CPCs. This is a scaled down model. Like we need a lot of calculations to get to an end result. So I have to scale this down in the range of micrometer. Like we can simply scale it up in our actual size and analyze it also, but it would require a lot of memory and time.
Yeah, explain the sizes there.
Like from here we can see the propagation of light is taken across the x-axis. We have an aperture. We are like going to explain a single unit of CPC and how it captures light at different angle of incidence from 0 to 45. It's shown in the next slide, next few slides. Like the aperture.
So how did you pick these numbers? Is it just because of the computational simplicity?
No, like these were actual numbers were in inches. I kept the ratio same and
You scale everything
yeah,
down.
and I scaled everything down.
And this is opaque, right? This is not.
This is made of silicon. It's opaque. And here, like put a thin silver boundary to make sure that none of the light diffract outside the CPCs.
Okay.
we want to see a real, what is the structure?
Yeah,
Okay.
they've all
Real
seen it. Don't
structure
worry about it.
is like handed over to you. You can see the original dimensions. Pass it over to Dr. Menon, please. Just a moment.
I think he knows.
So like for like validation, for modeling, we need to make sure that our model is correct and our variables are correct. This is the propagation of a plane wave in free space. Next, it's for the modeling for visible light. I have taken 500 nanometer wavelength, and for simplicity and ease of calculation, I have scaled down the model directly relative to 500 nanometer of wavelength, so that we can get the result easily and visualize it without any complexity. As you can see, the angle of incidence is 0 degree, and it's perfectly propagating through the CPC into the light channels or the light guides. As we increase the angle, we can see that there are some losses, like the intensity decreases further with the increase in angle. This is because, like, using Snell's law of reflection, using Snell's law, we can see that when a light is incident on a surface at an angle, a portion of it will be reflected and a portion will be refracted. As we increase the angle of incidence, the amount of reflection becomes greater than the amount of refraction. So the amount of light we can eventually pass on decreases. Like this can be solved using, like we have used glass. We can use higher refractive index material or a curved surface.
Now, why do you have glass in there? So what you're saying is that the problem, so I understand, is that some of the light is going on right here.
Yeah.
But why is there glass here? Why can't you just leave it empty?
You get a greater ratio of
You don't have to have
Yeah.
it as tall.
yeah.
Okay, that's it.
We discussed in
and one
class,
more
it's
thing.
n over sine of
And
theta.
one more
rather
thing,
than 1 over
during
sine of theta.
the reflection from this internal side, if we place a high refractive index medium, we can capture more light because of total internal reflection. If it's air, it will just go out. There will be
But
nothing.
you will avoid the reflection,
But the amount of reflection from the silver panels will be much more.
okay.
Also, for the purposes of what the model that I showed, we need to have the channels covered somehow to protect from debris.
Yes. it's
So,
rain and,
Since we're doing that anyway, we might as well add to the.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Yeah. Like if we increase it to 30 degrees, we can see
I'm gonna
that.
touch it off. Don't-
So,
Sorry,
like-
we're gonna keep going.
Go back actually. one more.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'll give it, I just want to make sure I understand. So when you increase the angle.
245.
Losing the coupling, which makes sense because the CPC has some acceptance angle.
Yeah.
So one recommendation I have is make sure this agrees with the theoretical acceptance angle, which is.
That was a 45-degree acceptance angle CPC, and there's nothing at 45 degrees.
Okay. perfect.
So, all right, base implementation costs, I'll go over this real quick. I calculated out the cost of glass, the cost of mirrors, multiplied by 2 for basic manufacturing costs, and
Slow down.
2 minutes, friend.
It's okay.
We calculated the cost of manufacturing the CPCs basically, and then calculated the amount of light in terms of energy that one would be getting from a square inch CPC. And then divided one by the other and obtained the number of days you would need to recuperate your costs based on the amount of energy you save. It's going to be a little bit higher than that. I didn't factor in losses from diffraction and into the fiber optics and what have you. So it's probably going to be closer to 2, even 2.5 years to recuperate costs. But as far as building lifespans, that's fantastic. Buildings last for many, many decades. So.
Yeah, my suggestion, by the way, to me, that sounds a little low. So I think you're probably missing costs, things like overhead, labor, transportation. You gotta think about those things also.
Yes, and we also.
By the way, like, you get to do a second iteration of this whole thing. One more time, right, for the script. So this is why I'm giving you some more solution. Thinking about it.
Certainly. One thing this does not address is the fiber optic cost because we don't currently know the amount of condensation of the light we're getting. If it's a factor of 1.5 or 2 or 10. We can calculate it. We have multiple designs that I'd like to go over that are rather intriguing, shall we say. So it's all based around think a pillar of reflective material that's slightly bowed outward. And it does what in effect is the opposite of a CPC. A CPC takes in light from some certain acceptance angle and condenses it. This column is slightly bowed outward so as to take in light from all acceptance from all angles, any angle. And while the aperture size increases while it goes through this column, if only by a very small amount, it does collimate the light far better. Now, one intriguing computational approach that one can take with this is when a beam of light goes into a mirror, one could say that the beam of light reflects off the mirror, but if we're doing ray approaches, we could also say that the universe reflects around the mirror and the ray of light just passes through. It's a strange concept, but it makes calculation infinitely easier in that we can now take these mirrors, reflect them around, then reflect the whole thing around again and again and again, so as to not need to calculate any reflection in a mirror, but rather merely.
I don't understand that. Explain where is the light? Am I looking at it straight on?
Yes.
Sideways?
This isn't an actual thing, it's merely a computational approach. Terribly sorry, I wish I had more time to explain.
So on the left-hand side, I'm looking straight on the way the light would see it?
No. So you see this image all the way to the left? There's a CPC on top, then a column on below, then a CPC column, CPC column. If you take one of these columns that are slightly bowed outward and you reflect it around itself, and then you take those two columns and reflect them around themselves and do that over and over and over, you eventually get a circle. Now, the reason we're doing this is, again, it's not an actual thing. It's merely a computational approach. Sure. So it's a computational approach to demonstrate that this thing does the opposite of what a CPC does, and it does it better and more efficiently than a CPC, but it does the opposite. So the idea is make a CPC, concentrate the light, but increase the angle of the rays, and then do the opposite. Make it a column. Collimate it to the same extent. So say you have a CPC with acceptance angle of 45 degrees. You bring it down to a smaller aperture and then raise the aperture just a little bit via the light column, but then recollimate it down to 45 degrees with the light column. So what you input is light within an angle of 45 degrees, and what you get out is light within an angle of 45 degrees, but with a smaller aperture. So you can just repeat the process over and over and over to get much smaller light, and thus a much higher ratio, meaning you need fewer light channels.
By the way, what you just described is basically a telescope in an imaging.
Really?
With a specific angular magnification. But we can talk offline.
Reinvented the telescope.
Maybe it needs a little discussion.
Please. I would certainly like to pick your brain on this. Anyway, the conclusion we had is that a base CPC design with only a CPC and some light channels is going to cost too much due to the immense fiber optic cost, because you need basically a plane of fiber optics. So we need some way of condensing that down either through these bowed columns or light channels, or some way to bring it all into one. CPCs help with that, but are not the final step. So there will be further steps, and this design here is what I think is most likely.
And what are you passing around by the way?
That's just a CPC design, which I would like to have had a working prototype of, but unfortunately it's not the case.
No, I was saying here it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How's it going?
Great, thank you. Just time to go on.
I think it's much better.
Here, let me give this to you, Amartya Damboya. And keep in mind that you